Hey, everybody. Jon Gums, Dakota Grappler, going live here on a Wednesday night. Got a special guest for us tonight, and I am so looking forward to this interview with Shauna Kemp. She is the head wrestling coach at Jamestown College. And what's interesting is you are actually the first female guest that we've had in 135 shows, so you're number 136. But I am so happy because guess what? This sport is exploding for you guys. And I think you are basically, how can you say, you want to say the father of wrestling, but probably the female father the mother of wrestling at Jamestown College. Yeah. You guys have had great success and everything else. But again, for those people out there, the numbers will start getting larger. Feel free to ask questions at any time during this. Make comments. In fact, the flow of the show goes a lot better sometimes. Sometimes you guys have questions that we can't necessarily answer ourselves, but the guests might be able to. So feel free. Bill and I have several different people that come in weekly. This also goes on to a podcast, which you can just listen to later, which you can find in all the different places out there that have podcasts. Plus, it'll be on YouTube. If you see this, you can watch this later on there. Myself, Jon Gums, owner and editor of Dakota Grappler, just got done with the state wrestling tournament. I got a few bags under my eyes because I tell you what it was like running 2 tournaments every day for 3 days straight, and it was a lot of fun. And I appreciate all the hard work that wrestlers do. And I am going to ask the first question of Shauna. Now, I want to know where you grew up and how did you start wrestling?
So I grew up in Arizona. I kind of claim 2 places. I actually lived in the Grand Canyon Village, which is this teeny tiny little town, and we didn't really have any sports, and I kind of just played in the forest and climbed trees and had an odd life. But then we moved to Flagstaff, and I actually started in martial arts, and I did Taekwondo. My brother did Taekwondo, my dad did Taekwondo, and they were also wrestlers, and I started that at a really young age, and I just did whatever my dad and my brother did. So I started wrestling, and tough middle school wrestler. They didn't want me around there. And I was always wrestling my brother kind of my whole life. And in high school, we started splitting weight classes. We're a year apart. So when I was 103, he was 112. When I was 112, he was 125. So we kind of slowly grew different in sizes. But yeah, I wrestled for Coconino High School on their men's team because at the time, 2004, we didn't have women's wrestling. I mean, we don't have it in North Dakota now, but Arizona does have sanctioned women's wrestling now. And coach, didn't want me, always had the girls who weren't super serious about being in there. And I was like, well, you're going to have me for 4 years, so better get serious about having me in here. And had a successful career in high school. I actually placed in the guys state tournament at 112 pounds. So couldn't quite keep being a 103, weighing 130 pounds.
So were you the first girl to place in Arizona?
Surprisingly, I was not. There was a girl from Japan, I believe, who placed in the 90s. And I can't remember her name. I should know that. And then there was a girl who placed my freshman year, Andrea Hughes. She ended up wrestling for Cumberland, University of Cumberland, and she also placed 4th at 103. So, and we never got to see each other in competition until her senior year in college, and then we ended up wrestling each other. But we're the select 3 there in Arizona.
Okay. Now, the biggest question I always ask is, you must have had to jump some hurdles to be able to wrestle. And how did that give you the perspective of what's happening now throughout the nation and what now for North Dakota?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest hurdles I jumped was administration, which is still an issue. The middle school principal, the middle school coach was like, oh, come on and wrestle. And the principal was like, no, you're not wrestling. And obviously the pressure of people and, well, she shouldn't be wrestling. She's a girl. And those things, which are still prevalent today. But for me, that really shaped just even me being the Jamestown coach, how I approach everything. So I try to join every committee possible, the National Wrestling Coach Association committee, the NAI committees, everything that oversees any rules, anything that has to do with women's wrestling, and insert myself in it, because it always happens that there's someone who's got an agenda on the men's side who wants to bring it in. And I said, no. This is women's wrestling. So, it can be tiring and a lot of work and a lot of committees to deal with, but I just don't want the younger girls to experience that. And the quicker we can get it to be the norm, then I could start stepping away. But for now, I'm putting myself out there as much as I can.
Okay. Would you say that is there a level where girls should not be wrestling boys? Or I think they should be wrestling either way. Is there some place where they should be separated or not? Like in the state of North Dakota, competition wise, we had 51 girls last weekend. And I think that in the wrestling room, it doesn't hurt. But I think once they get on the mat, I think honestly, probably girls are best wrestling other girls, but tell me your opinion.
So, I don't have the popular opinion here.
That's
probably
fine.
On both ends. I wrestled boys. It was necessary for me to wrestle boys. I did not have the means to wrestle girls. I didn't have the means even to go to higher level girl competitions. So for me to advance at all, I had to wrestle boys. And I've got my scars and my wounds from that, because being a girl, I'm different. So guys are stronger. My shoulders are wrecked. And I see that just across the board is a common issue with girls wrestling boys. In North Dakota, with only having 50 girls, that means those top girls, they have to wrestle boys. It's a necessity. So, ideally, we want to get to a point where girls are developed enough where they can develop each other versus having to put themselves out there with boys. But until we get to that point, so, sanctioning in May potentially, and like other states, California, for example, now they've got a lot of depth. So those girls are developing quickly. But until we get to that point, it's necessary, but we want to get out of that quickly. And we want girls to have their own division. We want them to be developing each other and to elevate all those girls quickly. So sanctioning is the first step with that.
Sure. What have you experienced with retention over the years now to keep girls in the sport? That I think has been the biggest fear for me, is we get a large level of girls, and maybe it's the sanctioning will help a difference in the junior high and later elementary type girls. And when it hits the junior high, then it's like we're all going to go and play volleyball.
Yeah. Well, when with that aspect, talking about volleyball or any other sports, wrestling isn't the popular spectator sport. So, naturally you're going to have people leave. Men with football or basketball, those are the popular sports. But for girls specifically, it's a hard thing. So last night I actually took my daughter to a wrestling practice, and it was pretty much all boys, the Taz Club wrestling practice. And she's pretty shy, but she's pretty athletic and has done ballet and other things. And just instantly you've got 3 male coaches, because I'm a parent at this point. You've got 40 little boys and 2 little girls, and that doesn't help keep them in the sport. And I kind of thought to myself, like, man, maybe I need to run something specifically for girls to add another thing to my plate for little girls, so they, that's intimidating, and it's you don't feel like you belong there. So and the boys don't want to wrestle the girl, so then there's that piece of it.
Well, I tell you what, the biggest advice that Terry Steiner gave the last time with girls wrestling stuff is the mistake he made with his own daughter. Do you remember that, Bill?
Yeah.
And he had said that he should have made sure that she brought her friends and got them involved, because he did scare her away by having to wrestle boys or whatever, getting in everything like that. But building that friendship and having that responsibility so that they could grow together.
Yep. And Terry's daughter, I believe, plays volleyball at,
correct.
I can't remember where, but yeah.
Oh, very athletic also,
yep.
Yes. Yeah, so Bill, you want to fire? I got a couple more.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head. I think the goal is is to to work towards sanctioning is obviously where we got to get, but and I think the growth of the sport, and that's what we've seen, just south of us here in South Dakota. Once girls started wrestling girls, we see an explosion, right? Because everybody's more comfortable with that. Now, but I also do believe, just like you experienced, it doesn't matter who we're wrestling. We're always we need to wrestle the best person in the room, the best person we can get our hands on. And in a lot of cases, that's going to be all cases right now in North Dakota, that's going to be a boy, right? So, those people, that's the way that the girls are going to develop. And I saw girls that were wrestling in high school, the boys state tournament this weekend. Some have also wrestled in the girls, but I mean, I saw some really, really talented wrestlers. I mean, I was really happy, very, very impressed. So, and I'm a big fan of women's wrestling, at every level. And I'll even say, I was watching Ronna Heaton wrestle last night, and you just can't tell me that her and Seth Gross don't practice. I mean, she looks more and more wrestling like Seth every time. And I remember Ronna wrestling at the Wahpeton tournament here in North Dakota in November of 2015. So she was competitive. Don't get me wrong. She was coming off of, I think, maybe a cadet world championship, but she just keeps developing, and a lot of that. And obviously, she's wrestling with some great women in that room now in Wisconsin. But so I think that's the goal. And I will say, if you, not to put anything more on your plate, but if you did put something together in Jamestown, I have no doubt that you'd have girls driving from Lisbon and Edgeley and Carrington and other places, to come and get some experience, because we have a couple girls that wrestle in Carrington in the in our youth program.
South Border,
but not South Border might get. Yeah, I mean, they have a pretty good bunch of girls now, and I think if we had a chance, or even if it was, 1 day a week or something, where those girls could go somewhere else and wrestle with 15, 20, 30, 40, 60, whatever the number is, girls, and then come back to the room, I think everybody wins. So, so I think.
And if you get them young, you're developing them, and they're gonna be tough as they get older. So.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think, I think that's a great idea. So if there's anything we can do to help with that, let us know.
Yeah, this is a last night thought, so there hasn't been. It's
done. It's already. We'll have it on the calendar by the end of the practice or end of the meeting here. So no, but that's. I mean, I understand how you would come to that conclusion, though, because it gets overwhelming. It gets overwhelming, and don't get me wrong, for a boy, if we have I bring Billy into the equation, my youngest, and he wrestled for a short period of time in third grade, right? I've been around the sport my whole life. He came, we went and wrestled one tournament. He wrestled 3 guys, 2 of which were Carrington guys. They all beat him up. The next day he's like, I don't think I want to wrestle, which was fine. I'm like, that's fine. Well, 3-4 years later, he changed his mind. Turned out okay. But it was overwhelming for him, so if we have a kid that comes into our youth practice, a boy, girl, doesn't make any difference. And it's the same story, right? There's, 30 other little boys that have been there, and they're all bouncing off the walls, and the coaches are, of course, I mean, you always have a tendency to gravitate towards the kids. You already know their name. I mean, all those so it's overwhelming for anybody.
Yeah.
So I would imagine it's maybe just a little more overwhelming, for a girl that's coming in. And if we could give them a chance to, excel, and just kind of get comfortable, I think you're steps ahead. So
well. And there's another aspect, too, that gets overlooked when it comes to girls wrestling boys, and that's the boys who have to wrestle the girls. And it's not so much in the, I pinned her, which there's no boy wants to wrestle a girl, especially at the varsity level, especially at high school. And, I had to carry some guilt with me, and I was a very good high school wrestler. I had over 40 wins my senior year, and over 20 pins. So there was young guys, freshmen, who are coming in who now are the joke of the team because they had to wrestle Shauna, the girl, and lose. And, you know, I think ADs and coaches, they don't think about that aspect. They can't say, no, girls can't wrestle, but they don't think about some of that mental and the psychology part. And one of the kids ended up quitting. Then the coach convinced him to come back. And then he had to wrestle me the first match, the first time he was back at the tournament. And I won the tournament, but it's like, man, this poor kid, like, he's 4 years younger than me. And that's a hard aspect too. So it's not just for the girls, but for boys too.
So here's the next thing I want to talk about. And I ran into this. I had a lot of kids that grew up playing hockey in Minnesota before we moved back to North Dakota. And at that time, there was no sanctioned girls hockey in the state of Minnesota. It's state of hockey, right? I mean, you'd think that's been there forever. That was not the case. So we had girls on our youth teams, and that was all fine. But what I saw once those teams started getting sanctioned, and it exploded in the state of Minnesota. But you started seeing the possibility of those girls going to play high school or college hockey, playing on international teams. Talk to us a little bit about that, right? I mean, that's the thing that I think is so great, because I know that women's wrestling is the fastest growing sport in the NAIA, and it won't be very long, fingers crossed, it'll be the fastest growing sport in the NCAA.
Yeah.
So, just talk to us a little bit about, what wrestling did for you as a college athlete and then as a senior level athlete.
Yeah. I knew when I was young, I think I was in middle school. I went to the girls' state unsanctioned tournament in Arizona, and they always had something similar to what you guys had this past weekend. And we went there, and it was me and my dad, and there was these two girls, and they went to an Oregon school, and it doesn't exist anymore, but I can't remember which one it was, but I was like, oh, well, I want to wrestle in college. And I was like, that's super cool. That's what I want to do. So that drove me, and I had my hard times in high school and like everyone else, and going through wrestling, and I knew though I was going to wrestle in college. And some of it, there's some responsibility, because when I was a national team member while I was in college, so trying to balance being in college, getting to the training camps, which I very much wanted to do. Sometimes I prioritize that over my school, which is not, now I'm a college coach, and I'm like, no, you guys have plenty of time to wrestle. So let's not prioritize some of that. And, and you forget that the average age, or the best age for Olympic female wrestlers, is around 28 years old, 26, 27, 28. And that's much past when you're done with college. So, taking that time to concentrate on college. But the college piece is much more important now, because a lot of the development gets done in college, especially in a state like North Dakota, where there's not girls wrestling. You don't have a lot of development. And so, from the national level and being on a national team, they need us developing the girls so that they can go on to the next step, to the international stuff. And for me, I retired a little bit young for what most girls do. I'm the same age as Victoria. I'm the same age as Helen. We started in school the same years, and I just went a different route, went the coaching route, and did that. But it's a good experience, and I think that the girls now don't recognize as much of back then. We really had to scrap to really get anything, and even to get to competitions. So, and then it gets kind of scary when you want to keep wrestling and you're a senior and you're like, oh no, I'm not sponsored. I'm not, what do I do now? I can't afford to wrestle on my own. And fortunately, I got picked up by Titan Mercury Wrestling Club, and that was my senior year. The club just opened, and it was a godsend for me. But yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you competed in the US Open as recently as 2019, right?
Yeah, came out of retirement.
That was just a primer getting ready for the beach championships. But
yeah, I actually qualified for Olympic trials, so I I'm training for that now. I planned on coming out of retirement, doing a short stunt and then being done. And then COVID happened and I'm like, okay, well, I got to keep training, I guess, for another year. So
that's great. So I guess I did want to get to the Olympic trials. So you're qualified. And any other girls from the Jamestown room that are qualified yet?
Not yet. We didn't really have an opportunity to qualify because we were banking on our qualifying spots at the NAIAs and then they got canceled. So we're hoping we have 2 opportunities. We're hoping to get some girls qualified at the national tournament and then hopefully a few more at the last chance qualifier. So
do you know the last chance qualifier, are they going to take both finalists this year? Is that the plan now?
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
That's what I thought. So that would be good. And then, NAIA, the national that's coming up in Jamestown that we'll be talking about also and that's just the champions, I assume.
Just the champions. Correct.
Right. Okay. Super.
Okay. And I see now, Donna, is that your mother?
Dana, yeah.
Dana. Okay. She's throwing some stuff out there. So I tell you what, I did get a kick out of one that I didn't post. Do you get to see those on your side?
No, not until you put it. Oh, maybe if you look over on the right hand side.
This is one I didn't put up there. So I get to see these as they're coming up, and your nickname was Strawberry. That's kind of funny. No.
Yeah.
So you can thank your
That's
mom.
what moms are for, I suppose.
She says Dad is typing. That's what she says. Okay. No, I have some big time questions because it comes down to, I want to talk about your Jamestown team, but I want to talk first about your mindset. Now, you have to be strong mentally. You have to be strong physically. There's so many aspects. Now, as a coach, how are you bringing your athletes into a mindset that they can be successful?
For me, my philosophy is a lot in development, and also we don't concentrate so much on wins. We get wins, but we look at all the small little aspects. So, you got a takedown or you got this. And really, I probably should talk more about us winning, but I'm a super developmental coach and I approach everything in that aspect and then really push the muscle memory aspect. You have a lot of athletes now who maybe lack confidence, maybe lack, just from even being on teams that were with boys or whatever else. And so you really get them to override that lack of confidence or that anxiety or anything else with muscle memory and just making them do it over and over. And everyone says, drill it 1,000,000 times. And I take that pretty serious. And so, we discuss all the development stuff. I don't show a million techniques. I know a lot of techniques, but fundamentals, all that stuff wrestling coaches say, we do the fundamental stuff. And I do my due diligence on tracking whatever patterns are going on within freestyle and then maybe making adjustments. But really the big piece is development and, obviously team culture, making sure everyone's getting along and being good practice partners and doing that. But yeah.
Okay. How many girls do you have right now in your room?
We currently have 23 girls.
Okay. And is there a max number you can have?
I prefer to have less than 30.
Okay.
After 30 can get hard to get to everyone, and you obviously want to give every person enough time to help them grow. So kind of that 25 range is where I like to be.
Okay. And where are you finding your girls? Your best place?
Everywhere. My best place is California.
Okay.
Obviously, a lot of girl wrestlers there. I have connections there just from the years of wrestling. I know a lot of coaches, and so it's easily accessible. But I've got girls all over: Alaska, Michigan, North Dakota, Nebraska, Florida, California. So we're kind of all over.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about your team. Why don't you tell us about the number of weight classes. Some people don't know that. And where you get to compete. Let's tell us about some of your athletes.
Yeah, so we have 10 weight classes. It starts at 101, ends at 191. And to talk about the 191, just for information, it's actually an interesting weight class because men have a really, really high, basically everyone can wrestle heavyweight, and women don't have that yet. So we're pushing to have, even in California, their state is 225. So college is another 30 pounds less than that. So, we're hoping to get college at a higher weight class. But so 101 to 191. I'm sorry, what was the next part? I got caught up on the weight class.
I started asking 2-3 questions. That's one of my biggest downfalls. When I start doing these interviews, I have so many things to go through my head. I start with one, I ask another. But the big thing is what I want to know is, tell us who your athletes are, and from right there, let's go to just your team.
Yeah, so our athletes, so our starting team right now, we can start. We also have something unique. So you're going to hear my starting team be multiple weight classes, because women don't have, this is the 101. You can have multiple. So we have 2 109s.
Sure.
One is a senior, Anne-Marie Hidalgo, and one is a freshman, Rayana Sehagen. And she is from Michigan, and Rayana's from California. So that works out pretty nice, having a senior and freshman at those weight classes. Rihanna was a Fargo finalist, great wrestler. Anne-Marie's, was a qualifier, and she was actually a transfer from Bruton Parker to here. So she was a good find late in the game. So, and then 116, and this is the lineup going into conference. So
sure.
116, we have Josie Barashovsky. She's from Wisconsin. She was also a Fargo finalist in high school. Last year, we didn't really get to see her full glory. She actually tore her ACL, had the surgery, recovered, and now is, going back into wrestling. So she had almost an entire year off. 123, Ariana Marufo from California, and she's actually going to be dropping down to 116 for nationals, but she'll be at 123 for conference. From California, Sam Weeks, she's 123. She's from Washington. 130, we got Allie Bodwin. I think, and I guess I've been leaving out what they're ranked right now, but one of our higher ranked girls too, she's from Texas. So we're all over the place. 136, Remy Vargas and Lucida Jara. Remy's from Florida and Lucida's from California. 140, we actually don't have a 143 right now. So Remy was a 143 and she dropped down, so we doubled up at 36 and are just now not feeling 143. 155 is Joy Kochiak from Alaska. 170, we have Sierra Talmadge, who's our only North Dakota starter. So right now, and we're looking, we have another girl, Kaylee, she's from North Dakota. She's a freshman and hoping to have her starting next year. But then we also have Mandy Camacho from California at 170. And then Kelly Lacoste at 191. She's a freshman. Agatha Andrews, who's our returning national finalist from last year, she's actually taking a redshirt year. So everyone's hoping to see her wrestle this year, but I'm just glad I get to have her for 5 years now.
So are you using a year of eligibility this year? You guys are not.
We are not, but you still take in consideration how long they're going to take to graduate and whatnot. So, but yeah, we're actually not. It's kind of a free year, and you're kind of deciding what you want to do. And so,
how many of these girls want to wrestle at that next level?
I would say about a third of my team is really serious about it. And not that the other ones don't want to do it, but it's a kind of dipping their toes in the water, like, oh, I haven't done this yet, so let's see, and feeling it out. And so 1/3 is really active in going to, wanting to go to the US Open or wanting to go to juniors. And then, and that kind of, as they get older, then they're like, oh, I want to give this a try. So you get some ambitious freshmen though, who are like, oh, I want to do all of it. And then they're like, oh, shoot, college is harder than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give me one characteristic that a female wrestler has that you can tell other girls that don't wrestle don't have?
That's a hard one.
Because I've got a couple. I've got a sister. She's a little more feistier than other women because I think she wrestled a bit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think they're stronger willed. I mean, they have a soft side to them because they've always had to kind of retreat back in that area, but they have this thing that turns on, kind of that snap of the fingers, and they can change, kind of be aggressive, and you don't find that in a lot of other women. I don't know. You're the coach of the wrestling women, though.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely true. There's a feistiness, and there's a I don't know if weirdness is the word, but there's just a need, and I think it's similar with boys too. I don't think it's just men, but I think they're better at dealing with adversity in general, men and women in wrestling, and there's just a lot of adversity in wrestling in general, the cutting weight, and I think at a young age there's much more discipline developed. Like, you just have to have more discipline because of the aspect of cutting weight and weight management, where your friends playing volleyball get to eat and you don't, and you're 12. So
oh yeah.
Well, that's one thing that I guess I always talk about, and I find myself talking to parents of potential youth wrestlers, right? Hey, we need you. And for a long time, I always talked about, you just don't understand how many great things can come out of spending a lifetime wrestling. There's all these great life skills. And I would leave it at that, right? But I've kind of made a list, and you've talked about almost all of them with women wrestlers, and it's the same with boy wrestlers. It's no different. Problem solving skills, things that they learn, handling adversity. We saw a lot of that this weekend, right, guys and girls, losing, having to come back, get the next best thing, and it may be right in the same match, right? Getting taken down, getting all those kinds of things that they learned on handling adversity. Obviously they learn to be disciplined. And then one thing that, and you would know this because you've seen a lot of the female wrestlers and male wrestlers on the national team at the highest level, is they just have and have developed a sense of humbleness, right? I mean, the great ones, it's amazing how many times you hear that, geez, he's just so humble, right? I mean, the Kyle Snyders and Jordan Burroughs and Jane Coxes and Helens and, all of them, so it's I would assume it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Because you get the same stuff out of the sport.
And there's a humility aspect too, just dealing with getting pinned. And
absolutely.
I did a lot of sports, and there's just like a personal humility aspect that you have to be able to just handle. And you're like, okay, well, I just got pinned or beaten against a one-on-one opponent, and,
right.
and just having the mindset to deal with that. And then how do you move on from that? Do you train harder, which is ideally what you want your athlete to do in wrestling, and problem solve in that instance and grow and everything else. So
and I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to mention John's experience this past weekend, right? And I went through this the year that my son was a sophomore, right? So had a really poor state tournament, and it just, you just know, and we don't know why that is, right? Why it bothers us as parents so bad, right? And it's not because we're disappointed in how our kid does, but we just know how bad that feels to have a number of things go wrong, because it can be kind of heart-wrenching. You go out and you lose to an opponent you feel like you should have beat, or maybe you have beat before. And it's and so as a parent, you feel a little extra, right? Especially someone who's so wound up in the sport like John or I are. I mean, and you think, boy, why am I? And you kind of look back and go, why does this bother me so bad? I can go to a football game and I couldn't care less. Fumble, whatever. Geez, you screwed up. No big deal, whatever. But it's because we know what that feels like, because no one gets out of this deal unscathed, right? I mean, I watched, Thomas Gilman get pinned by Zach Sanders last night. I mean, it's like nobody saw that coming, but this is what happens in this sport. So And you have to learn how to get through that stuff.
I actually went to India with Daniel Dennis after he got super ducked at NCAAs, and me, I was completely removed. I was so concentrated on women's wrestling. I really hadn't paid any attention to the men's wrestling at that time. And I think I was a junior, senior in college. I don't remember. And I didn't really know who he was. And I went on this trip and just coincidentally, someone brought it up. And I remembered someone saying, "Oh, the guy who got super ducked." I was like, "Oh, you're the guy who got the super duck?" And he was just like, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is the most embarrassing thing." And you could just see like in his face, the pain from that moment that happened. And it was just like, oh, and I'm now the horrible person who has brought this up.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to an interview last night with Kai Rochelle, and he was talking about, getting spladled, by, gosh darn it. No, I drew a blank, but it doesn't matter. The guy that spladled everybody. It's like, he said he got done. He walked off. His mother asked him after. It's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "I have no idea what happened." It's just all of a sudden there it was. I don't. Yeah. So, Darian Caldwell. But yeah. So
I think we've all had those moments as wrestlers, though. We're just
absolutely.
like, "Oh man, I just got head and armed," or I don't know.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think you don't get it unless you put that commitment into something so much deeper than what you have realized in your own life. And you see, like for an example, this last weekend, I got one great example. They finally had the individual championships, and the two kids at the end, the referee actually grabbed their hands and shook their hands, which we haven't had pretty much all year. And he raised the kid's hand. And honestly, I got goosebumps. It was like this kid gets to experience what it's like, because as a state champion, it's insane, because the emotions going to your coach, doing so many other things. But I saw the emotion on the kid when his hand got raised by that referee, and I saw him look at the referee for just a split second, and you don't realize how big that was. Like, guess what? I get this moment that I get appreciated for my hand getting raised. And I was going, oh my, I actually went over to the referee after it's done and shook his hand and said that was the best thing I saw all day. You actually taken the commitment to COVID, whatever, to lift that kid's hand, because it meant that much to, and he goes, we talked, all the referees, he said the referees talked, and 90% of them are going to raise that kid's hand in that match. And that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So many happy and sad tears in wrestling too. And thrown headgears and everything else. So
there's one.
That's one I didn't know.
Yeah. I did. I'm one of the only. It's one of the weird things I don't talk about very often.
I'd talk about it. I'd tell people at Hugo's. That's a nice head of lettuce there. You know what I did? I beat Helen Morales. She's a gold medalist at the Olympics.
We're actually friends and tough competitors. And the first time I wrestled her, I beat her. And after that, she just did not let it. I kind of came out of nowhere, and she was like, "Who is this person who beat me?" And I became her nemesis, but also became her friend in the process. And actually, we wrestled so many tournaments against each other. And my senior year, I remember thinking, okay, I keep getting blocked to be a multiple time national champ, and whatever. I don't even want to risk it. I know I could maybe beat Helen, but I want to go a different weight class. And she had been wrestling 121, and I was like, I'm just going to go 130. And that's not the mindset, right? You don't run from people. So of course she shows up at 130 pounds, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is my karma for doing that. And tough match. I think it was a 2-2 match too. She won, ended up on criteria, and we've just had really tough matches. And she just, she works and works and works, and is obviously a phenomenal wrestler. But yeah, I beat her, kind of just defeated her offense. And I think I don't remember if it was double legs or what it was, but my freshman year, I think double legs was my thing. And so U23 nationals, and she actually ended up, because it was a round robin criteria, and I lost to Jessica Medina, beat Helen, and Helen beat Jessica, and it was a mess. And Medina went for first and second, I went for third and fourth, and Helen went for fifth and sixth. And yeah, she wasn't happy about that one.
Well, there's the humility that comes if you aren't telling everybody you meet on the street that you beat Helen. I don't care. Yeah, even if I lost you were 2-2 in criteria, I'd tell her. I'd tell everybody that. So that says something for you.
No, my experience going back is the first time I saw girls wrestling was in kids wrestling, and they had the Fargo Open, and I was a fourth grader, and we had these huge brackets. We'd have brackets of about 60 kids. And I got to round 7 in the tournament, and my dad comes up to me and says, "You've got a girl this round." And that's round 7. I'm talking black points. People, a girl should be knocked out by now. It's the first thing that entered my head. And I'm just a fourth grader. And my dad looked at me and said, "You know, you have sisters, you wrestle them all the time." Just like I needed some mental thing to go into the match. And, and they're just a fourth grade girl. And I'm going, and he goes, "She's going to be strong. Her dad's the coach in Coon Rapids or whatever." And I said, "Okay." And I went out and I ended up pinning her, but she was really, really good. And she ended up just out of the placing in that tournament. But it was one of those tournaments when you get 7 matches in, you can't take anybody for granted. That was the first thing I learned is you can't take anybody for granted when you're young. Now, one thing is my sister, and I'm going to have to tell this story, and I don't mean to take this very long, but my older sister and my younger sister, I didn't have any brothers, were my wrestling partners. And so when my dad came home with moves or whatever, both of them got to try them, whatever it was, or I got to try them on them. And basically, as it went on, my youngest sister wanted to wrestle. And so we had the freestyle in the spring, and she brought a girlfriend with her. My dad says, "If you're going to come out, you have to have a girlfriend with you." And she wrestled the first tournament, dominated, pinned all the boys, won the tournament. Great, all that. Had the second tournament she wrestled. She makes the finals and beats another Napoleon, my dad, and wins it. So she went about 8-0. My dad came home and told her she's done. And she was kind of devastated. He goes, "You're going to go out for gymnastics next week." And I didn't learn till about a year later, and I had asked him, "Why did you decide that Mindy couldn't wrestle anymore?" My younger sister. And it was because he said, "I had a meeting with the other parent, and the kid wants to quit. And really, there's no benefit for a boy wrestling a girl at this age. Maybe later she wants to come out, but he thought that gymnastics would help her development and everything else she did." And he goes, it was a lose-lose situation for the boy. If he wins, it's not a win, really. And if he loses, it's really bad. And I basically just lost one of my own wrestlers to my own daughter. And going to be a future great wrestler who thought. And the kid never did come out for wrestling again. And so it was one of those where my dad had to make a choice over his own daughter or part of his team. And that's probably my first impression going, "Oh no, this is," and my sister loved gymnastics. She flourished on that later, but it was one of those where she would have been tough as nails. I don't know a boy that wanted to mess with her. She would dominate. And she probably would have been on a good chance to be a good varsity wrestler, but no, we didn't have it. I wish she would have. She's definitely hard-nosed enough to do it. I hope she's watching tonight. She usually watches a lot of these. She probably come right in there and mention who she beat. She knows the names of the kids too.
It's pretty surprising how often I come across older women who had wrestled when they were younger and were just like, "Oh yeah, I wrestled when I was a kid." And then obviously kind of maybe not the same scenario, but similar scenario where they got to adolescence and they stopped wrestling, or they just wrestled when they were 5, 6, 7 because they were coming along with their brother or their dad or whatever else. And so, it's.
Yeah. So those hurdles you had to cross. I so appreciate it that you did do it. Were there any times as you grew up that you thought you probably should get out?
One time, me and my high school coach, man, we butted heads a lot, and we're very close now, but we always butted heads. And I was a cross country runner. I was lean. I was also, placed at a national tournament in Taekwondo. So I was just very athletic and lean, and I was 128 pounds. And my coach was like, "You have to make 103. You're not going to wrestle." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay, I guess." And so running. And I actually got down to weight and had to cheat the certification, had just, all these hoops to just get there. And I couldn't there's just no way I could have made weight for regionals. And I was going in as one of the top ranked girls, and I was like 114 pounds, and he was not happy. And I was like, I'm running and running and running. I'm running 10 miles a day at this point. And I have been practicing for 2 months in snow pants, literally snow pants, and trash bag under my sweater. And, and I'm just like, I don't know what you want me to do. So we get in this big fight, and I come in, he says, okay, if you don't come in tomorrow at 107 pounds or something, I don't remember what it was, then you're done. And I'm just like, okay. So I ran and ran and ran. I lost like 0.2, nothing, had nothing left of me. And he sat me down and said, well, you're going to sit here and the team is going to run sprints basically the entire practice, and they're going to thank you the whole time. And just kind of made me feel horrible. And I walked out of the room and was just like, I'm done. Like, I'm, now just all these emotions, right? I was just done. But ran track because I'd been running track since I was little, and wrestling season was over now. And as soon as the next year started, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to wrestle. And I actually wrestled 125 pounds, won matches. I wrestled 119, and I kept going back and forth, being the starter, not the starter, starter, not the starter at 119. And so one tournament, I would wrestle one tournament, and then he beat me again. And he ended up taking second in state, the 119 who got to compete. And then the next year, in that year, I was like, I'm not cutting weight. And my senior year, I cut the weight, got to 112, and obviously it was beneficial. But that was the only time I was like, okay, well, I'm done. But I just love wrestling so much. I can't. I pinched a nerve in my neck, and so I had to take a week off. And this last week, I've just been like, okay, I need to get out here. I need to wrestle. So, and I'm not a person I don't like to go run. If I'm going to work out, I just want to wrestle and go live. And, and so.
Oh, I was the same way. If you can start the room and just enough to loosen up the neck, I'm ready to wrestle. That's how I like it too. Running, I said track seasons later. I want to wrestle. Yep, definitely. No, I know a lot of wrestlers. How about multi-sport? Now it's a little bit different for boys than girls. What other sports? Because I correlate football and wrestling quite often, and then in the spring, some of them run, some of them don't. But that's when freestyle starts. So you can actually do kind of a 2-season wrestling and one in the fall for something else. What do you see out of the girls? What are they doing as extras?
Most of the girls, I think, run just cross country track for the most part. If they do, a lot of the girls I've been recruiting have become year-round wrestlers, and that seems to be a trend with a lot of sports, not just wrestling, where they're just going to the club, wherever they're at, and then just wrestling year round. So, I really liked doing multiple sports, but track mostly. And then outside of high school athletics, judo, martial arts, even boxing, some just, I think, those combat sports obviously attract wrestlers. So that's the other.
How much weight training do you have your girls doing?
We do 3 days a week during the season, and like to do 4 days a week outside of the season. So 2 heavy days, and then the other day is more circuit, lighter stuff bands. But we do a lot of bands too. So yeah, I really like lifting. It's something that I wish I had learned at a younger age, and I think it's really beneficial.
Do you find that a lot of the girls coming into college have got weightlifting experience?
About 50-50, I would say, depending on where they came from. If they came from Texas, yeah.
Really?
Okay.
But, then you've got girls who've never lifted at all. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because I've experienced that. That's what I find, and that's one thing that we're starting to get more even at the high school level for boys. And in that is that you got to do a little bit of weightlifting, weight training, and just experience that, because it's something different too. The strength aspect in wrestling is so huge, and flexibility. I'm a big guy that believes in, I'm an old guy, so I do stretching every morning, and I do a push-up routine every morning. So I know try to stay flexible. I want to be able to touch my toes when I'm going to die. You know, I want to be able to bend in a casket and not just
overall agility, strength, flexibility, all of those things are in injury prevention with doing, even if it's just light workouts. And push-ups are actually great. We utilize push-ups a lot. When our girls are looking weak, we start doing push-ups again. So push-ups are just all around good.
How about yoga or any of those different types of training things? CrossFit?
You know, we don't do a lot of that. My team does request that periodically. And we had a girl do Zumba once when we just kind of had we're not going to practice. We're not going to wrestle today. And there was a girl who did a lot of Zumba and she's like, I'll lead it. And I was like, okay. So just kind of those fun things. But my team begs me to do games and I probably should do more games, but I'm always like, well, isn't wrestling a game? Don't you guys want to wrestle?
How about music in the room? What kind of music you put on?
Mostly rap. You know, I'm so out of tune with music of today. I'm an alternative rock, like that's all the stuff they don't like. And so we let them play the music, and it's pretty universally just rap. So
interesting.
You know, some of it's like, okay, guys, nope, can't play this.
What are some barriers that you're breaking down at the college right now? Is it still, because Jamestown's had women college wrestling for a while, but what barriers are you guys still trying to break down? Travel, name it. Are you guys getting to?
Yeah, we're fully funded. The university provides us really anything we need as far as, you know, we have all of our uniforms, we have all the travel, we can go to the US Open, we can do all of that stuff. You know, I think that it comes down to just getting more people to know we exist.
Yeah, that's huge. Yes, definitely.
So, you know, someone in town who's like, there's women's wrestling. It's like, oh, how do you not know this yet? And then they're like, oh, did it just start? No, we started in 2008. And they're like, and they're shocked because they've lived in Jamestown their whole life and they didn't know. And you know, obviously we advertise, but it's almost like they see it and then they just see wrestling. And even though it says women's in front of it and it gets ignored. And so that's, you know, having the national tournament here is why I love having the national tournament here, because the town hears about it and then they're like, there's women's wrestling.
Yeah, and I know that it was on Beck Sports this weekend with the state tournament, but I've had multiple people this week just kind of ask me about that. Isn't there a women's tournament going on in Jamestown coming up? I said, yeah. That's exactly what's happening. So, and I'm going to just throw you this out there, just so you know, it's not just you. I was listening to a podcast with a coach from University of Little Rock, Arkansas, right? They got a new program a couple of years in. And he said he runs into people on campus all the time that don't know they have wrestling. So right. It's, they're a D1 program and yeah, they haven't been around since 2008, but you know, these are people that are on campus. So
right. I think go ahead. Sorry.
No, go right ahead.
I was going to say you know, as wrestlers, I think we put ourselves in the dungeon, right, away from everyone. And when my mindset has never been that way, you know, as soon as I got here, the doors were always closed. People didn't even know the wrestling room was literally in the middle of the athletic complex. Other athletes on campus and teachers, and I mean, no one knew it was there because the doors were always closed. No one ever saw it. And as soon as I got here, I was like, I'm opening all these doors up for everyone to see us practice. And so I opened the doors up and you'd get people walking by like, oh, the wrestling room is right there. And then now they're watching us. And you know, our team had to get used to it because they're not used to just having people stop in. And you could always see when someone walks by, all of a sudden everyone gets a little burst of energy and it's good for them to experience that. And now we do have a sign and we have a beautiful wrestling complex. So, you know, I want to show it off to everyone, but we now have a sign that actually says that it's the wrestling facility and it's right across from the weight room. And so it's really nice.
What are you doing practice wise now, ramping up for the nationals? You got 3 weeks about here and
yeah. we're in a weird place because we did have a pretty short competition season. We've been on the mat since October, but we haven't had a lot of competing. We actually tried to take some girls to the US Open and had a girl test positive, and they were all close contacts, and we ended up only taking one girl. So we didn't really have much, and most of our staple tournaments got canceled. So typically we would really just be kind of doing the groove of things, shot drilling and a lot of live, and not really having to fix a lot of things. But we just got off. This last weekend was our first weekend off. We had 3 weekends in a row of traveling, 3 big tournaments in a row. And now we're having to take that time, since we have it, to fix all of that stuff. So we're doing a lot more technique than we would usually be doing. This week, today, we were just getting underneath, anticipating a sprawl from a shot, and trying to get things going a little bit quicker and not stopping. So stuff we would have taken care of in December, we're taking care of now. So tapering, it would be better to be tapering but it's COVID. So
Sure.
we're having to push it a little harder.
How about the transition from folk style to freestyle for wrestlers?
Yeah, every freshman who has not wrestled freestyle, because I do have a lot of girls who've never wrestled freestyle, are really intimidated coming in. And I always assure them it's not as scary as you think. And we spend the first couple weeks, we don't even do parterre. I just make sure they can get takedowns, and just kind of so they are like, oh, it's the same, kind of tricking their mindset a little bit, and and then getting them into parterre. And you do struggle with, especially freshmen, them wanting to base up, and then they get gutted, and it takes a couple guts, and then they realize, okay, I'm not going to base up anymore. But they learn it pretty quick, and we pretty much only do laces and guts. So there's not a lot of technique, a lot of techniques going on, a lot of technique within those two things, but start them off simple and work from there. So.
Okay.
So this weekend, we got the conference tournament, KCAC conference tournament coming up at Jamestown. So that'll be a little bit of a primer for what you have coming up in a couple of weeks. So you guys are 2-time repeating champs.
Correct. Yeah.
You got a two-time coach of the year, right?
Yeah.
Looking for a third in both, I would assume. So
yep.
So what do we have? How many teams in the conference? Is it like 6 or something?
We have 6 teams in the conference. We used to have Missouri Valley, but they moved to the Heart because the Heart started a conference. And the University of Jamestown's a GPAC school, but we wrestle in the KCAC because it doesn't recognize women's wrestling. GPAC doesn't recognize it yet. St. Mary's actually had to drop out because their school requires every competitor to be tested prior to going, and that's not a KCAC rule, and so they can't compete. So that's unfortunate. Obviously, we wanted everyone to come. And then Hastings is actually a new program who joined our conference this year, and Friend University also will be joining it next year. So for this year, we've got 5 teams. It's us, Midland, Ottawa, Hastings, and York. And it is now going to be a closer race. So each team, York was their first year. They were really, newer team, and now they've developed, had a couple years. They're on their 3rd year. Then Ottawa always has a couple tough girls. Midland always has a couple tough girls. So it'll be a closer race. I still feel pretty confident, but it's going to be close. So we need to make sure everyone is on top of it. So
now, conference-wise, do you get to have more than one girl to weight?
Correct. Yep. We can enter 15. You can have 2 max per weight.
Okay.
So you mentioned this girl already, but I've got a couple friends that run a wrestling podcast out of Michigan. And so all year I've been seeing them, tweeting out, and the other night they were talking about her on their show. That would be obviously Rihanna. but last ranking I saw, she was ranked number 2 in the country in AIA.
Correct.
So we expect some pretty good things coming out of her the next few weeks, I would assume, as well as I'm sure many other girls. But that's one that we've been following. I've just because of close contact and some friends that I have that are following her internationally or nationally. So that's kind of fun. Yeah,
she had a big win. She beat Asia Ray, and she actually pinned her, and it wasn't a fluke match where she just happened to catch her. I mean, it was a close match, and pulled it off, and hasn't lost a match at 109 yet. So lost a couple. She went up to 116. She had to follow the OPC, and so, but right now is undefeated at 109, and expect a lot from her the next couple weeks. So
good. That's awesome. So before we get to the NAIA National, so in the past, and I know even as recently as last year, you guys did also wrestle in the WCWA,
correct?
Right? And are you no longer wrestling in the WCWA, or did that tournament not happen this year?
Well, I was planning on wrestling in it, but it's kind of a mess. I don't know. There hasn't been a lot of communication about if it is or isn't going to happen. I served as the vice president on that board, and I resigned because I had to concentrate on the NAIA stuff, and so I don't know if it happens. I'm hoping to take them, and it was talked about being in April. But if it doesn't, then I think it's done probably. So.
Right. Okay. Well, I know that when there was first some discussion of the NAIA National 2 years ago, which this tournament I'm just waiting to see what happens this year. Right. 2 years ago we're going to have it the NAIA, which we did, but we had a weather event. Then last year we had a pandemic, and then I don't know if this year we're going to have murder hornets or what's coming. But this year I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to be just fine. We've covered all of the bases. So
I think we're in the clear. I mean, if it's not, then it's almost like, okay, I don't know. I don't know if Jamestown's the place, but we actually hope to host the tournament as long as the NAI will let us. So
that'd be awesome.
Plan.
Yep. So tell us about the schedule. That's March 12th and 13th, and how many teams are coming and what to expect.
Yeah, so 34 teams are coming. It looks like approximately 290 athletes. So the men's tournament is 240, and we're at 290. So it's going to be a lot of wrestling. It starts on Friday, 2-day tournament. We start at 10 on Friday, and we're doing a little different this year because of COVID. So we're going to wrestle the 5 biggest brackets the first session, and then the 5 smallest brackets the second session. So not necessarily 101, 10, but we'll look at the bracket size, and then once they're done, they'll leave, and each weight class will be assigned a mat, which is actually kind of nice from the athlete side. It was always nice when it was like, okay, I'm on mat 1. So right. So we'll have 4 sessions Friday, 10, and then that'll roll into whenever they kind of get done, and then an afternoon session starting at 5, and then Friday it starts up with the semis at 10 a.m. or Saturday, I'm sorry, at 10 a.m. and then the finals will be at 7 on Saturday night. So and it'll be on Flow Wrestling,
and it'll be on Beck Television,
and on Beck, correct? Yep.
John will be broadcasting, so that would be good. And I'll throw my hat in the ring. If there's anything you need, you let me know. I'm not too far away, and I'll be there anyway. So if you need help for something, you let me know. I can jump in and help. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things to do. So
yeah, we always need help with the national tournament.
Yeah. So we got that, and then after that, then last chance qualifier. Do we know where that's going to be yet?
We do not. I actually just talked to Terry last week because I had seen, obviously the Olympic trials got moved to Texas, and I hadn't seen what was going to happen with last chance qualifier, and they don't have a location yet. So wherever it is, we'll be there. Hopefully it's like in Sioux Falls.
Right. That'd be great. Well, that'd be a good spot for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Legends of Gold.
Legends of Gold. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then after that, Olympic trials and get as many girls as you can to that, including yourself.
Yep.
And so what weight class will you be wrestling at the Olympic trials?
57. So I actually was 53 and I lost a lot of weight. And then I think I had being a mom was really small, and then I put on a whole bunch of muscle. So now I'm back to, my college weight was 55, 59. So I've just put the muscle mass back on.
Yep.
So I'll be at 57.
Now
weight.
Do you have two daughters? I saw you run around the tournament. Are those was your two little ones?
I have two daughters. Yeah. 5 and 2. Archer will be 3 in May. So.
Okay. I
started wrestling 10 months after having her. Started retraining when she was 10 months old. So.
Yeah,
good.
That's how you take the baby fat off.
Yep. It really is how you do that, and eat a lot of protein and not very many calories.
Yeah. That helps too.
I need to have a kid to get rid of some of my weight.
I feel like people go the other way. They have the kids and then they gain the weight, and I was like, nope, I'm going to lose all of the weight. So,
it's unique, and I hope you have great success with your daughters too. Hopefully that this sport does something wonderful for them too.
Yeah.
Well, we should throw this out there for we know that you guys are going to be one of the top teams in the country in the NAIA, and we do want everybody to know that there's a program at the University of Jamestown, but it's been a successful program up to this point. It's not just another program, right? You guys were 3rd at the WCW last year, had 7 All-Americans, and I'm sure you're looking for that type of success in the NAIA also. So it's we talk a lot about the process and how it's going, and that we just want to kind of go along. But you guys have been very successful. It's been great.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'd like to see that same success out of the men's side in Jamestown also. But you guys are doing great, when you watch women's events from around the country, and I've watched them, for years. They all, Jamestown's always talked about very highly. So it's great to have you guys here in the state.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here in North Dakota, especially with this winter. Especially happy. So
it's been pretty good.
Good. Did you ever experience 20 below, 24 below?
No.
It wasn't very much fun.
Wasn't even that cold, I don't think. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, we do a thing on here called Rapid Fire for the last questions, because we've been over an hour here already. You've been a wonderful guest. But I ask questions, and they're personality type questions, and I put them up on the screen, and we call them, of course, the rapid fire questions, if you can see those. Okay, yeah. So first one comes up. Gatorade or Powerade?
Powerade. Powerade because of the sugar.
And what color?
Blue.
A blue, okay. Not and are you mad when you get the diet one?
Oh, no.
They don't taste the same by any means. Because I tell you what, when I get the 0 one, I'm going, it's just not quite.
No.
Okay. Next question. Popsicles or Dilly bars?
Dilly bars, for sure.
That's my downfall. Now, on their Dilly bar, do you eat the chocolate off, or do you just take a big bite?
I take a big bite, yeah.
Okay. Now, this has got to change this a little bit. Are you a mama's girl or a rebel?
I would say I'm both, but I was a rebel, but also, I guess I was a daddy's girl, but.
Okay. That's how I could have questioned that. Okay. I'm going to have to change that in the future. There we go. Daddy's girl. Okay. Fast-paced or consistently slow?
Shoot. I don't know. I'm both, I think.
Now, usually what the question ends up being is how do you want your athletes to be?
I think I would want them to be more consistent and slow than fast-paced and rigid. So.
Okay, very good. Because it goes right with this next one. For you as an athlete, were you a physical athlete or a mental athlete?
I was physically very in shape, but my success came from the mental side.
Okay. How about your athletes? What would you want to see?
Mental. Definitely. Mental side, handle their anxiety and everything else.
Okay. Your favorite holiday?
Christmas. My Christmas tree's still up, but that's because it's wrestling season. I said, I'll leave it up all year.
Okay. Now, I should actually ask this one different, Bill. You know the next question? This one right here, probably on the women's side. But would you rather be a Dan Gable or Cale Sanderson?
Cale Sanderson.
You could say Helen.
You could say. What's interesting is we talk to a lot of guys and a lot of old school people put up the Dan Gable. We've had a few Cales in there, but they go old school a lot. Okay, your favorite number?
Well, 3 and or 9 or 39. I can't pick one of them. So.
Okay, is there a reason for any of those numbers?
No, just I liked it when I was young, and that's what it's been. So.
Yeah.
What we find a lot of times out of wrestlers is 2 for takedown. Okay. And you might have already answered this. Best wrestler you ever wrestled?
Yeah.
In high school and maybe internationally.
Well, I would actually say, and I can't pronounce her name. She's from Canada. Rosarie or I should know this, but man, she kicked my butt. She teched me. And I would say it was Helen, but I have close matches with Helen. So, and in high school, I would say this kid, he was from Snowflake High School, and he kicked my butt too and teched me and just had my number. So Xavier was his name.
Okay. Any habit you learned in wrestling that you still do today?
Yeah, I cannot for the life of me fill up a glass of water, which is a terrible thing to say, but man, I just can't. Like, and my kids are like, Mom, can I have some water? And I'll put like this much in it. And then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
That's awesome. That's a brand new one.
Yeah.
Mine is I still weigh in every day.
I got over that.
Yeah. And then I also drink water when I do like it's going out of style. Like I drink because I withheld a lot of water too. I didn't know how to do that. And that is it for the questions.
You got to put this one comment down there across the bottom.
Okay, I got to go back to the comments. Okay. For sure.
She knows me best.
I think you've been exposed.
Yeah.
Hey, I do have one question. Tell me about beach wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Beach wrestling's great.
Probably should just fill it in, right? So in 2019, you won the gold at the beach wrestling US trials.
Oh, I did win gold at US trials.
At the trials, and then you went to the worlds, and that was in Qatar?
Yep.
Qatar?
Yeah. Yeah, however you say it, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know, but you got bronze there.
I got bronze there.
Tell us about the sport.
Yeah, so beach wrestling it's a really fun sport, actually. It's basically takedown wrestling. Different aspect, obviously, you're in the sand. It's a lot of pushing and a lot of being able to stay on your feet. A feet to back ends the match. So, I would say less conditioning, but much more muscle endurance. It's great. You get to go outside. Wrestlers, we're so used to being inside, wearing all of our sweatshirts and all of our stuff. And then you're like, oh, let's go outside in the sun. And it's, honestly, I'm hoping I can, as I get older, just to keep beach wrestling.
Oh, I bet.
And, you can't touch your knees, which is a new aspect. And, I'm snatch singles are my thing. And I was like, oh, beach wrestling. Perfect. I don't have to, I can just grab their leg and run them over and then it's over. So,
yeah, that's great.
Are there periods in that? Are there time basically, or is it till death basically until you go to your back? There is periods. It's pretty similar to freestyle as far as periods, but quite honestly, it doesn't ever go. I mean, with it being so simple, I mean, first person to 3 or a feet to back, which is 3, it ends pretty quick. So I don't think I've been to the end of a beach wrestling match. So okay.
Yeah, I know. I got kind of intrigued. I remember Reese Humphrey went and wrestled in a beach tournament. I thought, man, that looks like a lot of fun. And then I remember seeing that you'd done that right after the U.S. Open there. A couple years ago. So
my nose was shattered because I broke my nose against shoot, I can't, my brain's not working right now, but I broke my nose and I was like, oh no, I have to wrestle beach wrestling. And also it was a weight class. Like I was like 118 pounds, like 54 kilos. And I had to wrestle 60 kilos because it was either 50 or 60 kilos. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be so underweight. But you gave me 2 days and I definitely
were fine.
The weight back. So.
Good.
Well, sounds like good. Well, any last words from you, Bill?
No, I just appreciate you coming on, and you know, we're big fans. So I look forward to the I won't be at the conference tournament this weekend. I'll be at the Region 2 super region or Division 2 super region in Aberdeen, but I will be there for the national, and I look forward to it. And once again, if there's anything you need, you'd reach out, and we'll, you know, I will do anything I can to help you.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I always like talking wrestling. So
I hope it's not the last time, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Bill and I are basically to stay wrestlers. We'll be here for the rest of our lives. You know, whatever it needs, we'll promote it. You know, if you need, I'm hoping you guys have great success as the season goes. Stay healthy. And I don't know what kind of testing you have to do, anything that way. But we've talked so much COVID, I don't even want to get into that.
Right.
and really, in reality, I tell you what, you guys are doing a great job. I've been watching the program for several years since you've taken over, and this is just blossoming. You know, I just hope for great success, and I hope it continues.
Well, thank you so much.
You bet. And how about yourself? Any last words for any of your athletes, for any of the fans out there?
No, just keep watching it, keep encouraging people to watch it, and keep growing the sport.
Okay, definitely. And let's sanction girls wrestling. I tell you what, I did have the date written down. I think they have a North Dakota High School Activities Association meets like March 23rd, and they will be voting on it. And I talked to the head of the High School Activities Association and a couple other members, and they're pretty sure it's going to go through. I mean, they talked kind of a little straw vote and said it's pretty sure it's going to go through. So that would be huge for North Dakota. Yeah,
that would be huge.
And so, and Terry Steiner gets on and watch these. Hey, Terry, need to give you a call again. I'm getting a list of all the coaches and the ones of the state champions, and Terry Steiner's actually going to send them a letter, congratulate them. So I think that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Okay. Well, you guys have a great night. Jon Gums, Dakota Grappler, Bill Holton will be on again. We'll talk. We never did summarize the state wrestling tournament. I'll probably do that and just talk. We'll do that another night here, Bill and I, and we'll have some more guests. Do appreciate you guys got suggestions for guests. Feel free to contact me, Jon.Gums at dakotagrappler.com, or you can find my email. It's on there anywhere on the website, and we'll visit and get some more new people on there. Thanks again for watching tonight, guys. You guys promote the sport. Have a good night.